This is a gentle reminder to all my viewers to be careful and stay safe and healthy out there. Hard times will take many of us, but not nearly all, and we can all work to lessen that number by being smart. Thank you.
We are live, finally talking about this finale of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
The show decided to end just before the world did, so we've all been kind of busy. I haven't even finished the scripted review. I don't know if I will at this point, but
At least there's a special, at least, so there's that.
yeah.
Live from quarantine.
That's already been.
Yeah, they should be fine with the special. They already filmed it, apparently.
I like this one a lot. I've watched both episodes twice now. After the first one, I was like, I like that, but I get the feeling if I go back to it, I'm going to think it's just decent. And I do think it has significant issues. The biggest one, I think, is like the climax. This pair of episodes has the exact same problem as Can You Hear Me? Which is like, there's a 5-minute, 3-minute stretch in the climax. Why? No, this is wrong. This is so rushed and weird and out of nowhere, and it's the exact wrong note to end this story on, but whatever. The climax is my biggest issue with this episode. Aside from that, I really, really enjoy most of it. I think the human stuff, the human Cybermen stuff, isn't as compelling. Again, we've still not really hit that sweet spot of knowing exactly what to do with the Cybermen and making them interesting on their own. The Doctor and Master stuff, I love all of it. Adore all of it. I think it's gold.
So to add on to that, just camera-wise, I don't know if it was maybe just the recording of our TV. Just camera-wise, there were some choices where I was like, what is happening? Why? But acting, top-notch. 11 out of 10.
Sacha Dhawan and Jodie Whittaker carried this episode for you.
Yeah, no, Sacha Dhawan and Jodie Whittaker are amazing, but everybody's on their A game. I feel like the human characters, the future Cyberman fighter human characters, I wasn't super into them. Didn't really get a connection except for that kid, but the other ones I was really not into at all. But the visuals, stunning, music, amazing, acting, 5 stars, especially Jodie Whittaker and Sacha Dhawan, and I just want to give them all of the hugs after this episode.
So the short version for me is not one of the best finales. As a total package, I don't love it. There are things I love about it. It's infinitudes better than the ending of Series 11, so just a grading on a curve compared to that.
Hi. I know everyone here from a Facebook group we're in, and I'm also a huge Doctor Who fan, so I just thought I'd invite myself along to this because it seemed like fun. As for the episode itself, my first point was going to be what pretty much Nick said. I enjoyed it a lot more than the Battle of Asgard. I mean, it's more interesting. I won't say it's better, but I kind of had this thing where essentially the Cyberman, I think people's main complaint was that it's 15 minutes. It feels like the first 15 minutes of an actual story, it's really slow, which kind of felt bad going to this episode because everything is super rushed to get to the point when it comes to the Cybermen stuff, and I felt like they could have summed that up a lot better. So the pacing was a little off anyway. I'm trying to avoid the big stuff because we're probably talking about that later. Stuff I liked. I think, Sacha Dhawan's probably the highlight of the whole thing. I love his master, and I really hope the actor comes back to play the part again. He's just so compelling in his maniacal frenzy, and he just owns every scene he's in. There's a Deadly Assassin reference. That was nice. There's that scene with Graham and Yaz, which I really appreciated. That was a really good moment. I'm honestly trying to say something else I really liked about it, but got these really bizarre and out there ideas. I don't think it was really well served by the first half, personally.
Yeah, the second half is definitely the stronger of the two halves.
Yeah, I was more fired up by this a week and a half ago than I am now. It's just mostly the whole twist, which I'm waiting for to go into because that's kind of the biggest issue I think most of us have with it, and it's the most contentious thing in the episode because otherwise it's just kind of a runaround. I really dislike how they dealt with the lone Cyberman. He's one of the more interesting villains they've introduced in the Chibnall era, and the way they defeated him was seriously weak and underwhelming. But and once again, for the second or third time, the Cybermen are used as puppets for a master scheme, and it's a bizarre trend that it's almost been in a row, especially whenever the master comes back. Every second season, it's since Series 8. It's really bizarre.
It's practically a tradition now, I think.
Yeah, I guess that makes his name more
We
fit.
have the Centaureans already.
I mean,
gosh.
I mean, I guess like the Master wouldn't work with the Daleks, and they kind of hinted at that in the Series 9 story, and that
kind of worked together a little bit briefly in the Frontier in Space.
Yeah, so I don't know what point.
Gave me a brilliant idea, Daniel, that could have like completely fixed what you're talking about and my issue that I have once we get into it.
I will say about this. I didn't like the presentation of how it was executed. I don't like the idea either, but I don't think I would have liked it anyway because of my own idea of how the Doctor should be functioning. I'll get into that. What I will say, though, it's ballsy as hell. This has been an idea they've been trying to do since early on in the classic era, and they've managed to succeed in doing something incredibly different. Whether that's good or bad, it's a different story. I guess points for trying. But I don't like the overall. I didn't really. Yeah, I didn't enjoy the episode overall, but the more interesting stuff I think we'll get into later. So yeah, I'll let somebody, because I'm rambling also, I'll let somebody else take this.
Okay, I'll just give my very brief, and then I'll let you and Boris and Robert, because they'll probably be the most negative. We'll have like a trickle. I thought it was interesting as I watched it, but it's one of those things when you think about it, it just kind of falls apart for me. But I will say I love the Master, and the performances and everything were good. But man, did the Cyberman just kind of just... they just didn't do what I thought they were going to do with them. I thought they were going to be like really important and central to the story, but they just got rid of them very quickly, and it was just kind of lame. And then the whole first part is just all build up. Also, the companions I didn't like in this episode, mainly because I felt like they could have been cut out.
Yeah,
I know you won't agree to that. But...
I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that.
One thing I will agree on, the acting was from Jodie Whittaker. Like, I think by the end of this series, I really like her as the Doctor a lot more than I did before. I think part 1 was actually quite a solid setup. I remember I posted in the Facebook group, it didn't feel as big or momentous. I didn't think as past, part 1s of a series finale. But, with hindsight, it was an interesting setup, and I do like the lone Cyberman as a character, which is why I was also quite very annoyed that he got just removed from the equation in The Timeless Children. As far as the twist, it's not that it's a bad idea. It's not a bad idea on paper. But like if they did something like this back in the 1970s, where they, when it was originally shown in The Brain of Morbius with the faces, that was an interesting thing back in the 1970s. It's just that since then, especially with the name of the Doctor, right? We've established since then the Doctor has never had any lives prior to the first Doctor. Otherwise, how Clara is in his literal time stream in the name of the Doctor. She never sees any of these past Doctors who the Doctor doesn't know about. So how? It doesn't make any sense. It's mainly the execution which bothered me. Namely, how does the Ruth Doctor, if the Ruth Doctor is supposed to exist, and I know it's not explicitly stated, but if the Ruth Doctor is supposed to exist before William Hartnell, then how does she have a police box?
Like Clara going through the time stream, like that doesn't even bother me. You could just say she went through the time stream of that regeneration cycle and whatever. But the police box is a big deal. It's like that legitimately.
Yeah. And I'll also say the Master and the Cybermen as a series finale thing needs to just die already. It was tired. I thought the Cybermen Time Lords were just.
We're just spoiling now. It doesn't
I
matter.
don't know if it was supposed to be funny.
We are in spoilers, yeah.
I don't think it was supposed
Yeah, I
to
guess we're in
come off
spoiler
as some
territory
degree.
now.
It's been a
But
month
it was
and a
just
half. People should know this by now.
the Time Lord Cybermen looked stupid. It was a ridiculous idea. It didn't really make any sense. In general, I just thought the presentation of it, like half the episode was a narration. And I know I'm probably going to be the only one here who's also a bit more negative about the Master than most people are. I really like Sacha Dhawan's performance. Yeah, it's mostly just related to how it seems like the character has completely regressed since Missy and has just become, John Sim again. You know, it's like it's as if the events of the Doctor Falls never happened. They've never really referenced or even attempted to even hint at what made the Master suddenly evil again. And I know regeneration and everything, regeneration changed personality, but it just feels very disappointing to me that he's again just a generic bad guy, and that was a major problem with me for the episode as well. And honestly, I really just didn't like the finale. The first part was a decent setup. The second part just has so many problems. I could go on forever. As I said, I liked the acting. Like Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, I think is pretty good now. She's definitely not one of my favorites, but she's definitely been better this series than last. I really liked the scene with Graham and Yaz. That was a very nice scene. I don't know. If it had actually led to anything, it would have been even better as well, because it seemed like the companions were just stuck with these really forgettable side characters who were just unbelievably just crap. They had no personalities whatsoever. And then they took up so much time in the first episode as well, which I felt lessened the quality of that one a bit too. Yeah, not exactly supporting characters I'd love to see return.
Okay.
The series.
Yeah, this whole finale 2-part thing is a mess. It's like starting with Ascension of the Cybermen.
Like in order of positivity to negativity.
We're going in descending order, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was the most positive about the last story. I'll just say that. So I don't want to be negative.
Someone will complain about it. It doesn't matter.
It's Doctor Who.
Starting from the top with Ascension of the Cybermen, it really doesn't feel like a whole lot even happened in that first episode at all. And the thing that annoys me the most is like the most interesting thing in that first episode is negated by the end of it, because the Benny subplot was the most interesting thing in that episode.
You mean Brendan?
Well, not Benny, Brendan. I meant Brendan. It doesn't really matter.
It was repeated so many times it's in your head. Just stop there.
I'm mixing my memes. There's a lot of memes this season. Are you the Guardian?
I want to go back on the Brendan thing, but I'll wait for you to finish.
So yeah, the Brendan thing is now like it takes a 15 minute or whatever how much time of the episode. It doesn't connect to anything in that first episode at all. Like there's no indication of that. And then like it turns out it's just it didn't even happen really. It's just a guy's nonsense. And it's like, and then the Master shows up in the next episode. It's like, oh yeah, I was broadcasting this in your head. It's like, where was the indication of that? None. Yeah. It's so weak. I don't understand it. And then like apparently like the Division was this thing. They decided to like blacklist that, but then blacklist the Timeless Child thing, which is what led to everything going to hell. It's like it makes no sense to me. I don't get it.
I think Time Lords are just idiots. That's canonical.
That's fair, I guess. And if they are idiots, then like it kind of makes them being like the thread for the next season kind of like, oh, that's not fun. And, yeah, the human characters not great. The only one I liked is Kosharmus, really. Like he was kind of cool. Like that guy who had a lot of charm to him, and he had some cool lines. No, it kind of annoys me that like at the end of the episode they bring up that he was the guy that sent.
Yep. We're gonna get into it.
Yeah.
And it's like, why didn't you bring that up earlier? That could have been something you could have built on more.
I've got a lot to say in response to what's already been said.
You can talk about Kosharmus. Let's just we'll get back to me later.
Okay, fine.
Say it.
That's the worst. Him coming in at the end is terrible. And it's like, I've got a lot to say in response to Rob and like the Master being a generic bad guy in this episode. I don't think that's the case at all. This like going back on what we did with Missy, and like I didn't like the Dr. Falls, so I'm not really too attached to that. But putting that aside, I think what's done with him here isn't generic at all. I think it's super fascinating. His whole thing is like, I'm going to take an army of Cybermen and take over the universe. He doesn't care about taking over the universe. He doesn't care about taking over anything.
Yeah, that happened in Series 8, though.
He just wants the Doctor to murder him. And his whole plan is like the most bitter, most petty murder-suicide attempt in the universe. And I think it's kind of amazing for that. But like,
before you go on, Nick, I'm just gonna say, a Master. I guess he is a little bit like John Sims again, as far as the immaturity thing. But
I thought this back in Spyfall, even though he was better in that story.
Yeah, but now he's played by a good actor.
Yeah, no, see, I don't see the John.
No, John Sim is very good in the sound.
I had to get the dig.
In the sound of drums. and the Doctor falls. It's just the end of time where he's really bad.
I just do not like his take on the master.
Master, I'm just gonna wait around.
I always liked the Amanda Hagen pointing out in her review for End of Time that the reason the Master eats the burger when it's sped up is because the director misunderstood the script.
No.
Cheating.
I'll get more into that and like why I love him in this episode and the differences I think between him and the other Masters. But that's also a prelude to the fact that that climax where you've got him and the Doctor and like he set all this up just so that he would kill herself and him, and that's all he's wanted. And the way that he just stares like a hole into that detonator that she's holding, and he just looks at it and looks at it and is like, come on, just do it. And it's such an emotionally charged moment. And then Kosharmus comes in. And
by the way, I fought the Cybermen in the Resistance. Let me do this.
Did you order an ass pull, Doctor? Here is your ass pull.
We sent the Siberian back in time, but I guess we didn't send it back far enough. When, like, a scene earlier, we had the Doctor being like,
whoops,
I started this with Shelley. I really like that because it makes this all sort of indirectly, like, we talked about this with The Haunting of Villa Diodati and how, like, her being like, you think it's so easy, like, to make that sacrifice choice. Like, this being the follow-up to that made that seem like a really meaningful choice. Where it's like she chose to save one man's life, and this is the consequence of that, and she maybe has to kill herself and the Master because of something that she chose to do. But now it's like, nope, let's put all of that moral responsibility onto this other character.
Yeah.
And Daniel, you made me think about this. Perfect way to sort of lessen that problem and make this a little bit better of a Cyberman sort of thing. Don't let Kosharmus blow himself up. Don't even mention any of that. Have the lone Cyberman, have Ashad be the one who blows that up. Like,
that's really good, yeah.
Take the death particle out of his body, make it like a thing that he has on his person. The Master takes it and, like, he does something, whatever, like he imprisons him for a bit so that you can take him out of commission for the 20 minutes that you need him to not be on the player, to not be on the chessboard. Then he gets himself out, the climax comes, and instead of it becoming this cop-out, it's this thing of like, the Cybermen are still a meaningful factor in this story, and you've got this other character who is so... Because what I love, and that I wish what this would also do is like pay that off, is in Ascension of the Cybermen, we have the Doctor being like, you hate yourself, you hate what you are. Like, the very fabric of what makes you who you are is driving you insane with rage. That describes the lone Cybermen and the Master. That's both of them perfectly. And if you bring it into the climax to where it's like, the Master set all of this up because of his rage and spite at like what he is because of the Doctor, and you have that undone by this other person who is driven by that same level of spite. You tried to like usurp my whole plan. Rather than let you get away with that, I'm just going to kill all of us because that's how deep my self-hatred and my hatred for everything goes. It still relieves the Doctor of a little bit of personal responsibility, but it makes the Cybermen more meaningful players in the story. It brings that sort of character parallel with the two of them to a satisfying close. And it doesn't give you this thing of like, oh, hey, let's introduce this element of this character that we didn't allude to at all previously. Because part of why I wanted to rewatch this was, did we have any line of dialogue previously in the episode? It's like Kosharmus was part of this thing. Nope, it's just in that last couple of minutes. Like, I sent the thing back in time. All right.
Like, how the heck did he do that? Because there's so much emphasis on the fact that humans are they're just working with what they got.
Yeah, wait a minute.
They don't have much.
First
He's able
place.
to be like this savior figure because Gallifrey like pops up and we get an explanation for that. Did he like walk in the Gallifrey, come back out with like time travel tech?
Well, I don't think that's what happened.
Like, how did he do it? What?
Yeah.
Like they said the barrier was like he had never seen it like that before, so like I don't think he ever saw Gallifrey in the barrier, so they probably didn't get any time travel from that.
Yeah, I don't think
Like-
he ever saw it.
No, I was joking. But yeah.
I think the idea of a shad is really interesting because there's that line where the Master's taunting him for turning them into robots, and you could play that off as well of his own self-hatred and like removing his own humanity and stuff like that. And that would have made a bit more of an interesting payoff to the scene than just having Cybermen in goofy outfits. it's interesting because like there's that bit because when you're talking about the Doctor being personally responsible, it reminds me of that bit in the series 1 finale with Christopher Eccleston, where a choice the Doctor makes in the previous story, the Long Game, pays off in a way that like it's his responsibility. What I've always wanted it to be like the Doctor to have more of an emotional reaction to that one of him saving the day had this terrible consequence later on, and they were playing up with that idea because the Doctor's a lot more angry and she's a lot more volatile in this story. She's yelling at people, and then they just decide to not make it partially her fault because it's this guy's problem now and he solves it, and it's really lame. It's a cop-out. Just one more thing, because when Boris is talking about the Brendan subplot, that's the one thing I said about Ascension feels like it's so short, because I was expecting that subplot to pay off in a much bigger way in this, and it doesn't really. And that's when I'm saying like they should put in more setup in Ascension for the flow of Timeless Children to be a bit better. Because I think the stuff in Ascension is fine. It's just a bit too slow for what they needed to set up for the finale. The one thing I will say, though, I always got the impression that the Brendan story was their mask for the Timeless Child reveal. That they were putting in this really mundane story to cover up the actual thing, and that's how the Master broke it through the Matrix. That's the reading I got as well. That may have been you reading too much into it.
No, that's the idea.
Yeah.
Because like when he falls, it's similar to how the Timeless Child falls and she survives and stuff like that. So I just wanted to bring it up.
I think the whole thing with someone else sacrificing themselves for the Doctor at the last minute has been done a lot of times before, and I never like it. It happened with, I'm thinking of the Poison Sky, when he's going to sacrifice himself for the blowing up the Sontarans. Then Luke Rattigan, of course, comes in and sacrifices himself. I reckon, I don't know, the Doctor was just betting on him doing that.
Because Luke actually has to redeem himself for the stuff he did, whereas like the Kashara thing.
Yeah, the Poison Sky handled it better, because I do actually like Luke Rattigan's character, and it is kind of a redemption thing. Whereas this guy, I honestly couldn't remember his name. He'd been in like a few scenes, had not been important to the episode. Then suddenly he comes in, exposits his whole backstory. I'm just like, who are you? And then he just blows himself up. And I'm just like, okay.
Well, I definitely didn't have that. Like, he is important to the episode. He doesn't feel important because we've all pretty much unanimously agreed that the human stuff is the least engaging part of it, and his role in the episode is all centered around that. Like, he is the goal that they're trying to get to for Ascension of the Cybermen. But, like, I don't know. He left a great impression, I thought. Like, he's clearly just having so much fun just destroying Cybermen, and he's having a ball.
I'll be honest, I forgot all about him until he's probably
the actor was in Game of Thrones.
Oh, maybe he was just such a forgettable character for me that when he just showed up at the end, or maybe it's because especially all we're focused on is the big twist of the Doctor's past lives. So when this guy just shows up and is like, "Oh yeah, I fought the Cybermen and I sent them back in time, and now I'm going to sacrifice myself," it hits you a bit.
I think the problem with the side characters is we're so much focused on the Doctor and the Master, so when we get to these other characters, and like I said, I didn't care for the companions and stuff in this episode, it feels almost like they're interrupting it. It just doesn't click as well.
Well, to me, for the companions, but not the humans. Like, I feel like Yaz and Ryan and Graham, like, I think their stuff to do was fine. I mean, I get why Sharmas had to exist. I kind of don't see why the other ones had to exist. To begin with,
I'm gonna make this point because I know Boris has a thing he wants to say, but like I feel like maybe part of the problem, like to what Rob is talking about, is that because Kosharmas is kind of like a fun, like just kind of enjoying himself character, he doesn't seem like the character you would expect to make the sacrifice play at the end. That's part of the whole, like, we should have alluded to the fact that he had anything to do with the Cyberium, because for most of the episode, he just seems like a fun side character, not someone who needs to redeem themselves at all. Then he comes in and is like, I need to redeem myself.
Let's talk about the Master for a little bit, because his characterization does remind me a lot of John Sim. You say he's got a lot of deep moments, but the thing is, John Sim's Master had like deep moments too. It's just like, that's not really anything special. We used to have it because we didn't really have too much of that in the classic series too much, but it's like, the problem is, it isn't the deep moments. It's like the over-the-top craziness that like needs to like be calmed down. Like you said, like this Master was like the least memey out of all of them, but like this guy is memeing it up. He's like ham. Like when he's got like Cyberium, he's going nuts. He's like, the carpet is red because it's soaked with the blood of our people. I don't think it's him, like as an actor necessarily. It's just like it's the direction and the writing that like they just need to mellow him down because like he's going too ham and like it's too much.
I mean,
and like
I like that he's on 12 all of the time.
My response to that is twofold. Like when I say he's different to the Sim Master, I don't mean like one has depth and the other doesn't. Like you're right, they do both have depth. I think what they're doing with the two characters is different though. Like with the Sim Master, when he says, I want to conquer the universe, I believe that's actually what he wants. Like he's got this hole in himself that he thinks will be filled by just having power over things and like rubbing his accomplishment in the Doctor's face. And there is a degree of that here, but here it's like when he says everything I am is somehow because of you and I cannot stand that, it's like he's going through an identity crisis. And that's kind of why I like this tying into the Doctor's arc this series. Like going back to Fugitive Doom, like part of their problem is just like, okay, I've got all these lives that I don't even know about. Like there are other quote unquote doctors that I have no memory of. What does that mean about who I am as a person? Am I even like, what am I?
Yeah.
And like they start to spiral a little bit. And the Master is that like taken to an extreme where they're like, I have like not even as much control over my own personal identity as I thought I used to have. I don't know how to process this. I'm just going to explode in like pure spite and hatred. And when we get to the end and he's like, you may have made me, but I've destroyed you. It's like, it's a different thing to the Sim Master. He's just so fixated on the idea that like the Doctor dictates who I am in a weird sort of way. So I'm going to force them into this situation where like, I get to dictate what their last actions are. Like I will control the Doctor's identity because they indirectly control mine.
Ties in perfectly with like your alternate ending, like you said, tied into both the Doctor and Ashad. And it's specifically in like by virtue of being who you are what you hate and are therefore contradicting your own self-worth, with Ashad being like a Cyberman who's able to feel and acting out of feeling, and the Master acting against the Doctor but realizing that like his entire ancestry and life is because of the Doctor. And then my thing with the twist, with the idea of the timeless child, what's that face?
I feel like this is going to open up a whole can of worms, and I still have a point to make.
It's just under the hope that the Sasha Dewan Master comes back. Please come back. Give him a smooch. I think that the thing with the timeless child twist, I feel like I can't judge it until I see what direction they go with it, like beyond this episode. I feel like he kills them all because it's like, one, he wants the Doctor to be in that position where it's like, I dictate you, because he is literally the master of nothing at this point. No, they bring that up in Spyfall too, like when he's like almost crying, telling her to call him the Master.
I didn't even think of this.
Yeah, has had an identity crisis this entire season. He like desperately needs to be the Master over something, which I think is why they decided to do the reusing stupid he's in charge of Cybermen now.
That's actually really interesting. Yeah, the fact that his whole issue is that he needs control over something.
Yeah.
And that he's so attached to the name.
And I think also, like, he kills all the Gallifreyans for that point, but the implication I took, and I'm 90% sure this was intentional, was that he took those actions because he is angry for her.
Yes, also
because,
true.
like, his thing is, like, I thought I was the one who was hyper-abused by the Time Lords as a kid.
But no, turns out it was both of us.
Turns out it was both of us, and I can't stand that.
And now to finish up my response to Boris so that he can then respond to the response, on the subject of them being like overly manic like the Sim Master, that is true of both of them as well. But like the way that Dewan is performing it, I get a different vibe from it. Where like with the Sim Master, when he's being a manic crazy head, you get the sense that he's doing that in part as like an act in character to like throw people off. The Dewan Master, I feel like he's just genuinely not well. And, like, not in the way that the Master usually isn't. Like, when he's having fun and being crazy, you can see in his eyes, you can see the, like, I want to die. And it's like, you don't get that with the Sim Master. Like, it's coming from a place of, like, he just does not care anymore because he's broken. That was a lot. I'm sorry, that was a lot. I
I
apologize.
want to give him a
I just wanted to jump in. I was going to say the actor who plays Kashama is Ian McElhenney, who is a wonderful, really great actor. He has a lot of presence. He's in Derry Girls, and you guys should watch Derry Girls because Derry Girls is amazing. I like the fact that this was the Essential Cybermen is the first time Ireland was ever mentioned in Doctor Who, as far as I know, as far as I've seen anyway.
Oh.
Kind of anyway in Ireland.
It was shown,
And
but
it-
it was weak, so we lost it.
Oh right, cool. I didn't know that. But
Wait,
yeah,
actually, no. I meant like the Ireland in that episode is like because it's a simulation in the.
it's not really Ireland. Yeah, they made it a realistic version of Ireland to the point where they said a Gardaí over it instead of guard stuff, which I thought was a nice touch. They have a Northern Irish actor, and he has like I think he completely mutes his own accent. I'm not going. Another point I want to bring up about the Master, just to bring it back to that point. One thing that really bothered me is that they explain why he wants to destroy Gallifrey. That's fine. They do not explain how. We know why the Master wanted to kill the Time Lords and destroy Gallifrey. We don't know how. It's not so much a plot hole, more I'm wondering how this one Time Lord managed to kill the entirety of their species, and considering how powerful we know the Time Lords are. It's just something that bugged me, especially when I was watching it.
The Doctor can do it. I guess the Master can.
gives you an
I never-
idea of just how like viciously bloodthirsty, but also like dedicated to this idea the Master is.
Yeah, it's kind of better, I think, to leave it to your imagination.
Yeah.
Like, what must he have actually physically done to get things like that?
It's still a bit weird
This-
that one guy could basically destroy the planet.
I think this is brought on to my annoyance that Gallifrey was destroyed again, and the Time Lords were destroyed again.
And this
Rassilon is still out there because he left and held them, right?
which is what I think we're doing after this series. What I like about the way that we chose to do this, like destroying Gallifrey again, is that we didn't make the mistake of time locking it again.
Yeah.
So if we want to, we can still have other Time Lords pop up in the show whenever we want. We've already done it.
Bring back Drax. That's
Just
what I
say
say.
from a point in history before that happened. Like, this isn't a thing where like the Master destroys Gallifrey and then we've taken Gallifrey off of the field and any of the characters off fields to ever be used in a story again, like what Russell did. Just, again, it's about the Master as a character and expressing his rage and his personal spite. Like, if we want to bring Time Lords back for a story, we can do that, and I like that Chibnall left that door open.
Bring back Omega.
Well, the last time we brought back Omega, we got Arc of Infinity, so maybe not.
Like Rob, I'm miffed that, like, the Doctor Falls have just kind of been like moved aside. Like, I get the idea that like the Master is like found out all these secrets and he's losing it. Come on, man! Like, that's not cool. You could have at least like addressed it a little bit. Like, that might have been nice.
Mhm.
If
Like-
I cared more about Missy or that episode, I would probably sympathize.
Why do you hate Misty? Here,
Not really invested in like what they chose to do with her. Just her general characterization. I've made a point of this basically whenever Missy's come up, which is like I dislike the sort of super childish, glib way they go about making her a psychopath, where it's like, oh, I just love to talk about how much I love killing and maiming people. The Master could be like that a little bit, but having like most of the humor from them constantly come from, oh, look at how sadistic they are and look at how much they just love hurting and killing folks.
Well, I do think that's just one aspect of her character, to be honest. It wasn't like the sole aspect of what
No.
they took the character.
And it was kind of symptomatic of just like how I didn't love the way that Moffat wrote her, and so it was like, I appreciate what they're doing. Like, this is what I like about having such sort of different takes on the Master, is that they can all sort of handle the same ideas in very different ways. So the fact that the Doctor and the Master are technically still friends has always been part of what informs their dynamic. Like, it was important to Sim, and it was really important to Missy, and it's like implicitly really important to the Dewan Master still. For the Doctor Falls, the Misty parts of that episode are probably my favorite parts of it. But I don't know, I thought the Doctor Falls was just a really boring episode. I'd like having that disregarded just does not bother me.
It kind of feels like the defense. Well, I didn't care about this character, so
That's exactly what it is. I'm not trying to disguise the fact that that's what it is.
I know, but I think that's because even though there's characters that I don't like, if they give them like a bad, like contradicting thing, it's not good. Like honor the past characters while doing your own thing with the new characters. It's possible. As far as the masters go, I just wanted to say very quickly, the John Sim master to me seems the most childish. He's very arrogant. He seems like a teenage boy to me.
I do think the John Sim Master does have some really good moments. I think, like when he kills everyone in the cabinet room, and also particularly the phone conversation with the Doctor.
Yep.
It's like I really like John Sim's Master in The Sound of Drums, and then in The End of Time, he just turns into a complete like loony caricature, and I'm just like, it's not exactly embarrassing, but it's like it's supposed to come across as serious, but it's actually hilarious.
Yeah. My whole point of bringing it up, I'm just saying the difference between the masters. I just feel like he's the more immature master, and then Misty is more the playful master, and she kind of gets off on being evil, but at the same time she wants to develop her friendship again with her best friend, and I find that very interesting. And she has a lot.
I just feel like Missy is the only version of the Master to me who has been like the original, Roger Delgado, because the original idea was, the Master is the Doctor's old friend and he's just trying to get his attention with these crazy schemes, and that's why Roger Delgado is the best Master, I think. Whereas versions like Anthony Amory and John Sim, and now probably this one, are a bit too over the top, bad guy for me.
And then we have the last one where I'm just going to say his is a more just anger.
Let's back off the Missy. I feel like of like the three main New Who Masters, we're not counting Derek Jacobi. He's like a little bubble that's kind of a unique blend of cool. I feel like Michelle Gomez, out of those three, she plays the manic stuff a little better than the other two, just because like maybe it's because of her comedy background. She's able to like kind of like hold it back a little bit a lot of the time, so like it kind of works a bit better for me.
Naturally from her.
Yeah, it feels more organic. She got those crazy eyes. She can pull it off.
And she does that like in other shows and stuff too.
I was going to say my reason for not really caring and playing the Missy 2 is probably way more childish than Nix's, is that I don't think it works for the character that he has a redemption story, and the way Moffat redeems her in The Doctor Falls, no matter how they're going to bring her back to Mania, is going to seem like a cop-out. So I don't really mind that they skip over it. Personally, I get why other people are bothered by it, because they were very invested in Dr. Falls and in her arc in Series 10. Actors themselves, I do think like John Sims is really good, and he's great in that scene when on the phone with him, and it kind of shows the menace that Davies never allowed him to get into, because he is a really good actor, but I don't think he was given enough. And also forever salty that we didn't get a Derek Jacobi Master. Frank Utopia for that. Yeah, so even the 5 minutes he's in, he's so good. Like I said, I think there's a difference, because as crazy as Dewan can be, there's always that repressed anger in him that he does look like he's ready to explode, and Dewan really plays into that. Whereas Sims seems more dastardly, maniacal villain, and Missy's kind of more kind of crazy Mary Poppins vibes, and Michelle Gomez plays into her comedic side a lot to get across her kind of manic side. And I like Michelle Gomez a lot in the role. Yeah, my whole point about the redemption thing is because the Master is such a recurring villain. And the one thing I like about him is that, like the Doctor, well, until this episode, the Doctor had a set timeline. The Master really doesn't. And I like the idea that stuff happens in between those stories that we don't really know anything about. Like, at one point, he can just show up as a corpse, and we don't really know how that happened. But here we are. And I like that about his character. So the idea of him not being redeemed for the body much, it's like the whole running gag about the fact that he gets into impossible scenarios where it looks like he's going to die and gets out of them without any explanation whatsoever. I love that about the Master, because people complain anytime he comes back and they don't explain it. I love that he just gets out of it and doesn't explain it. He's just good at surviving.
That's your point. I understand the appeal that we want to have the Master chance and stuff. What you could have done is like maybe give her like the Venom treatment, where it's like like she's kind of more of an anti-hero, whatever the master is after Missy. Like they could have been like an anti-hero rather than like an out-and-out villain. It would have been a decent way to evolve, like do something kind of different. Maybe they're trying to be more good. They're like the Punisher or something. They just don't their morals are kind of messed up. So it's like that could have been a decent way to bounce off of it. As for the timeline, I guess we can't know what the timeline is now. Like it wouldn't make any sense because why wouldn't you talk about the fact that you blew up the planet?
Yeah,
this doesn't make much sense.
According to Sasha Dewan, his master is directly behind Missy. He's the one after Missy. What happens when Sim Doctor kills Missy?
It would be nice if they clarified it, though.
We know that, like, regardless of what happened, Missy didn't regenerate into Sasha Dewan. He took O's body.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like,
O's
Selena
body.
Gomez regenerated into someone else, and that someone
Selena
else
Gomez.
took. That's I
No.
said.
Oh my god.
No,
Selena Gomez is just
like,
master of
Michelle
disguise
Gomez.
the whole time.
I legit just wanted a skip now of Michelle Gomez pulling off a mask to reveal Selena Gomez as the master.
But yeah, no, that means there's two scenarios here. That means either Michelle Gomez as the master found out this information and stole that body, or Michelle Gomez regenerated into someone else who we just have not seen off screen, and that regeneration stole this body.
Like, what happened is that, like the aiming master who, like, possessed a guy, what happened is that, like, he took his position in the agency or whatever, but, like, he shrunk down the original O guy. Like, he didn't take him over. He
Yeah.
just
No, I'm not suggesting that he took over the body, but we know that the body he's using is that body. Whether it's like he made himself look that way, because the doctor explicitly says, "I met O," like face to face, they have met.
Well, I thought the idea was that, like, that that the doctor was hanging out with that whole time was actually the master the whole time. He got her trust or something like that.
Maybe.
I mean,
Maybe.
Right, because it says he got O his first day on the job.
Yeah.
So
true.
that could have been the master. You're right, Boris. That could have been the master that the doctor met all those
It
years
was
ago.
me, the master, the whole time.
Guy is the master.
Showed up and said, "Hey, I'm O from the first day and have been in the Dewan body the entire time."
So yeah, maybe Michelle Gomez really did just regenerate into Sasha Dewan, and I'm just wrong.
I do want to say, as much as I didn't like the writing of the Master in this story, Spyfall, I did like Sasha Dewan's Master a lot more, particularly because of the way he basically chose the code name O, specifically because he knew the Doctor's reaction would be, oh, the Master I like, you know, and I wish would be written like that more. I just wanted to say that just as an add-on to that what we were talking about. I just don't like when the Master's written as a sort of over-the-top villain. He's sort of someone who's constantly trying to get the Doctor's attention in a way, which is, I think, the best portrayal of the Master, the best way to portray the Master, really. So I would like Sasha Dewan to come back, provided I think he's written better.
I feel like what we have here is completely in line with that.
Missing a little bit of trolling is what Robert's saying. Like Michelle, she does a lot of little trolling, like
Yeah.
having fun. And I know you say you don't like that, Nick, but that kind of just makes it kind of fun for me
The
because
fact that she's trolling him, I don't want to say unsubtle because none of these three have been subtle in their varying degrees. But like, I don't know. The Master, I don't think somebody who like constantly feels the need to like verbally remind people and the audience that, oh, I kill people. Aren't I so edgy? I kill and maim a lot of people, you guys.
I don't feel like she does it all the time. It's just she's having fun
Yeah.
with
I do think, though, they sort of emphasize quite a bit how the Master is so disregarding of human life, referring to them as people, rotting corpses and everything like that in Death in Heaven. So it's she sort of like sees it as a joke that she kills people. I thought that sort of is in fitting with at least the Missy version of the Master quite a bit.
She doesn't look the humans the same way she does, like herself in the Doctor. Like,
Yeah, there's like
Well, that's a recurring characterization of the Master, I think.
and Doctor,
Like she sees humans as like cattle, pretty much.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I think Dewan builds on that though, because he's obviously he's like, it's always good to keep a copy of one's work, and he just has O in a matchbox, and then he's like, don't kill anyone, and he's like, fine. It's like, did you move? It's like, no.
And he pulls the same trick on a shot in this one where he's just like, the Siberian won't leave as long as I'm alive.
Yeah.
He's like, Oh, okay.
I will say that scene was funny, even though I'm annoyed in a vacuum about the whole thing.
I will say the one scene I do like with him, and we'll get back to some other stuff later, but just like, I do like the bit where it's like, this could have killed him, and we could have all blown up, and like, I might have welcomed that.
In the minority, not only in this group, but also just Doctor Who in general, where like I wasn't really feeling Missy, and I think it was more just I didn't like the episodes she was in, less than like her acting and stuff. And so like seeing Sasha Dewan have like a return to like explicit madness, because I'm always down for explicitly mad, insane characters. I have a problem. Like that was really fun for me.
Crazy.
Spends literal years in this identity just so the Doctor can make a pun when she figures out his name. Is that not?
Yes, I do love that bit, as I said.
O is a likable dude.
Oh,
He's a likable dude, and he is kind of snarky and trolling them. Like when he's like, when Graham's talking while he's trying to like set up his house TARDIS, and he's like, "Is he just here for running commentary?" And so when you see him super emotional, I think that hits, I don't know, even harder. Like I said, just like the idea of that parallelism between him and the Doctor, both having identity crises for basically the same reason, but with like completely different results. I like that. I like that a lot.
I just want to make one point about the one thing. The whole idea that like he hides his O when he has him in his body makes me think that they're basically doing the whole confirming that he control his regenerations. If he's regenerated, he chooses to look like O. I'm here to point out random social classic Who references, I guess. They keep referencing the Fourth Doctor stories a lot because they reference his Legopolis in Spyfall Part 2 about the Master throwing him off a building.
The best Master moments of this series, actually, because I like that they had a really good conversation and they joked about the Master killing off the Fourth Doctor.
Yeah.
You know, it's that type of friendship between the two that I really like. It's
a great way to sum up their twisted friendship, and they did feel like old, like him and Jodie did feel like old friends in that moment. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the Timeless Child.
Here we go.
The Cyber Heads were dumb, and the Cyber Time Lords were dumb. Was there anything else? Maybe the Yaz bit could have been like condensed, or like maybe more show don't tell. I don't know. Maybe Timeless Child sucks.
I feel completely neutral to this as a plot development, as a way to this sort of like personal identity and what that means arc. I think it's pretty neat.
I think I'm neutral on it because I like the idea like the Master is angry for her. I just want that more explicitly stated. Like there's a lot you can do with that, not only in like the idea of Ruth and like more Doctors having existed, and you see her talking to herself and now like pumping herself up, and I wonder if they're going to make like a thing of trying to figure out what the situation with the other Doctors is once she gets out of prison, which I find hilarious that they were finally like, why don't we just call the cops on the Doctor? Why don't we just do that? I think the way it was executed was really, really nice, partially just because it was filmed so well. Their mom, Tecteun. Yeah. No, I liked that. I liked that entire thing was silent. Like it's just the Master narrating. There's no dialogue to go along with it. There's a lot of just letting the imagery sink in. And I feel like if the idea of this episode is let's go into this identity crisis and reveal that the Master's entire like thing is he just wants to die because he doesn't want to have to live with this knowledge anymore. The way to have done it than make it the Doctor. I like that a lot. Which, like, again, we mentioned like the police box thing doesn't make any sense. But like other than that, I think you've opened up like a giant can of possibilities as to what the Doctor did before being the first Doctor. I like world building, and so I like the idea of they used this tool to world build Gallifrey and the Doctor's character. And so like I think it was done really well. I can definitely see how in the future it might not be added on to very well, but I think that, and especially when she overpowers the Matrix with like that montage of classic stuff and Ruth and all that, I think that's just Chibnall's like love letter to the series. Whether or not you think the episode itself was like good at executing that point, I don't know. That moment alone kind of made it for me, and the interaction that like got the information out, the interaction between the Master and the Doctor was really good. Singularly within this episode, I think it's a really neat choice.
And I'm going to go last because I can foresee a lot of arguments that are going to be
feel
made in
everyone-
the next 5 minutes. I say 5 minutes, like we're not going to be here for like another half hour.
No. I will get my point across after you guys get done.
I've seen some debate or something about. It's not really a debate so much as there seemed to be a question of whether or not Tecteun was torturing the Doctor, and that's why she died all those times, or like the Times Child or whatever. And, like, I just assumed that like these experiments happened over so long a period that like there were so many regenerations, or like that the Doctor didn't really have a good survival instinct because she was dying and she fell off a cliff. So like that's just something I was wondering who was thinking, like, what your guys' view on that was.
I think it's completely ambiguous, and it's probably that way for a reason.
I got the impression she was torturing her.
Clearly meant to get the sense that she gets like unhealthily obsessed with it and is like starting to view her as experiment first, child second, and that's part of the whole problem. But whether or not she facilitates the regenerations is left up in the air, and I think in part we do that because Chibnall has not worked out what he wants that to be. And I think I'm just going to say this now because Chibnall has said that he has his like 5-year plan, and I'm sure that he has planned out parts of this. I don't think the specifics of what Tecteun did is anything that he has in mind. I think either next series or at some point we're going to be introduced to Tecteun like in quote unquote present. I think the Doctor is going to meet that character and confront them about this. I think they're going to actually show up at some point. Because if not, I'm not sure why you even bother to give that figure a name. Like, you could have told this story the same way and just said,
The Mother.
The Explorer throughout all of the Master narration. The fact that we give them a name, I think we're going to meet them at some point, and the Doctor is going to like hash things out. Like, do you realize what you did? Like, I think that's going to happen at some point.
I think it would have been funnier if they just called her Hot Mama.
Well, I mean, that wouldn't have been very long since she very quickly stops being a mama.
I know, but just imagine, because the Master had to say her name so many times during that. It's like,
Mama.
Come on.
That random woman in the background who talks to Bernard Cribbins.
Even if we never see like other Doctors again, or even if we never like fully follow up on the other specifics of this situation, I'll be shocked if that character doesn't show up and the Doctor doesn't like have an issue with them.
It opens up the entire can of worms to make every Doctor canon, because now we can say the Doctors from the Curse of Fatal Death are in the canon, and we can find out specifics of how they bribed the architect. A lot of people are bringing up kind of how this ruins the lore, because people bring up canon. Used to bring up canon a lot, or they still bring up canon and stuff like that. And I think trying to pretend that Doctor Who has a specific set canon is ridiculous. It started off as this doofy little education show that blew up into whatever the hell it is now. It's not the continuity stuff I have an issue with. It's the fact that, once again, we are making the Doctor the most important, special, most wonderful being who ever crossed the universe. And Davies did this as well, and Moffat did this as well, and they all do it. And it just bothered me, because I like the idea that he is part of a privileged species. He's an alien. But they're not, like, particularly important within their own set species. I mean, they even imply that he's a classic series, that they're not even a good Time Lord. They're a really terrible student. And they can't do a lot of the stuff that the other Time Lords can do. I like the idea that what makes the Doctor special is their ability to be as human as they are, despite how alien they are, and fighting the good fight, and always doing what's right, and using their actions rather than being special from the birthright they gave to the Time Lords. People want to bring more mystery into the Doctor again. This brought mystery back to the Doctor. Fair enough. I'm just saying it bothers me that they've now made her an integral part of the Time Lords. I just feel that kind of takes out something about the character that made her special through her own actions.
Okay.
I'll wait to see what they'll do with this in the future. Maybe they'll do something more interesting. I don't know. I'm going to stop now.
There's a lot to unpack here, and I think, first of all, we should acknowledge that, Daniel, you're making two separate arguments. On the one hand, there is the part of this that is the Doctor should be, like, just sort of pleb among their own people. And, like, you're right. I do think if any part of the appeal of the character is lost, it is that element of, like, you're right, they're not a good Time Lord. they can hardly fly a TARDIS compared to someone who actually successfully graduated the academy. Whether the Doctor is like good or competent or whatever by the standards of other Time Lords is something that I think you can take issue with. It's not something that bothers me all that much. I think it is a separate issue from elevating them as like this cancels out the fact that what makes them special is their actions. No, this has nothing to do with their actions. In this episode that makes the Doctor special compared to other Time Lords or makes them a more wonderful person or whatever, we learned one thing, and that's that they are where regeneration comes from. That does nothing to cancel out the fact that what makes them the person that we have been watching for decades is the actions that they take. And I think that's what this story is about. The comparisons have already been made with like Rey Palpatine, because that is the other big like go-to thing of like recently we did like this character was secretly more genetically special than you realized. On like basically every level, this decision succeeds where that decision failed. Both of those stories are trying to be about, oh, you found out this thing about your heritage. Well, that's not what defines you. What you do is what defines you. The way that Rey Palpatine fails at that, and this is just because of who J.J. Abrams is as a storyteller and his inability to let go of the past. Like, The Rise of Skywalker tries to do this thing where it's like, it doesn't matter where you come from, Rey. What matters is who you choose to be and what you choose to do. And then the rest of that movie is basically like, no, stay in the past. You are defined by the things that came before you always. And it's like it's this weird dissonance that the movie is clearly not aware of, but that completely destroys whatever it's trying to do. We do exactly what I'm saying, what we're not doing here. We make it so that like who Rey is genetically is informing her character traits. So like the fact that Rey is related to this character in the past is why she gets angry sometimes, or why she feels this pull to make certain choices that she does. That's not the Doctor. The Doctor being the first like thing to regenerate and like being the cause for the creation of the Time Lords, that does not impact the choices that they make on screen in episodes that we watch. It just doesn't. They are still special because of the person that they choose to be. They took actions of their own accord that were not defined by the fact that they happen to come from this place or that they happen to be able to do this one specific like supernatural ability that everyone else took advantage of and gave to themselves. That's not what makes them who they are. And that's the point of the conversation with her and Roof, where it's like, when have you ever let yourself be stopped by who you were? When have you ever been defined by like your past? And like tying that into Fugitive of the Jadoon. And in part, I will say the one reason I think it's good to have the companions here is because after she has that revelation and she like blows up the thing and she wakes up and she's like, this, what I think is a really good delivery from Jodie Whittaker, where she looks around and she's like, my fam. And it's like going back to Fugitive of the Jadoon, where they're like, whatever, the word fam is silly, who cares? But when they're like, we don't care who you used to be or however many regenerations you used to have, who you are to us and all that should matter is what you do now. I think it matters that she has that realization for herself and she wakes up and she sees them and it's like, whatever, all this stuff happened. I'm the cause of the Time Lord. Who cares? I'm here in this moment. These are the people who know me for who I am now, and they came back to save me. I'm having trouble in my brain connecting they are the cause of the Time Lord Society to suddenly that means that who they are as a person and the choices that they make don't matter.
I mean,
that's not computing for me. People keep acting like that's such a one-to-one, like, obvious thing, and I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me.
But, like, the Master has to literally break the matrix of all Time Lord information just to get a glimpse at that idea. And obviously everybody else on Gallifrey sort of looks down on the Doctor being a pleb that, like...
But there's also the degree to which clearly they had their memory erased, and how much of who you are as a person is your memories. If they don't remember all of these past lives, how much is that even really them? And that's a conversation that's a totally different episode, but I think is important to consider. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm gonna stop now. But just like Lucy and Edward and Daniel and everyone I've talked to who has a problem with this, just like they're coming from this place of, well, obviously the fact that like this reveal means that they're not special because of what they choose to do. Like, obviously, like, how do you not get it? I don't understand. I don't understand the connection.
What's important is her actions at the end of the day, but it still adds just this little layer of like elitism in there, because without her genes, we would not have Time Lords. They would not exist, and their species would not progress in the same way that they would have. And like I said, at the end of the day, yes, we should focus on her actions, but that's still in there. She is still responsible. Time Lord's existence and the progression of a society because she has special genes.
Maybe I'd care more if I cared more about Time Lord society, but I don't.
That's why what you're dismissing it, because and that's the thing. That's fine. You don't have to care. I'm just saying that's why people have a problem with it.
The other angle to it, where you say it's problematic, I also don't get that. It would be problematic if we said, again, this ties into what I'm talking about. If we said the fact that the Doctor could regenerate before anyone else could, and the fact that Gallifreyan society is owed to them, if that's somehow connected to the fact that they are morally superior to all the other Time Lords, that would be genetic elitism. That would be the show saying you are actually better because of your genes. This is just a thing that she is able to physically do. I don't see how that's elitism, especially since they become a lab rat, essentially, and they become victimized for who knows how many years in order to create this society. Like, the Doctor doesn't create Time Lord society. They get used as a tool to make that happen. If anything, that's the opposite of elitism. That's, you have this thing that's special about you, and we're going to exploit it.
Yeah, but that means, but she's still special to begin with.
Right. But like, you're conflating elitism with a person being unique, and that's weird. It's not like elevating someone to say they have something special about them.
Yeah, it's like if somebody had like type O blood.
Yeah.
Was also just like a Mr. Rogers level person.
Not the thing is, like, stuff like Rey Skywalker has maybe trained some people to treat any instance of genetics being a plot point like it's somehow condoning genetic superiority. That would be problematic. I don't see anything in this scenario that's problematic. Problematic would be saying you can only be like special or good, like, period, if you have a specific like gene. No, this is just saying the Doctor had this one superpower that no one in reality would ever be able to do anyway, and that like led to all of this stuff. Like, I don't see the problematic messaging there. I just don't see it.
Bounce off the Rey thing. Like, I'm at least gonna say the whole thing with Rey is that, like, the reason people kept asking about her origin all the time is that she leaped far in advance of like so many people, like, to insane that needed like training. Like, even Anakin was like, he needed like he was like a chosen one and stuff, and that's kind of what we were asking.
And I maintain that you shouldn't have been asking about that because that was dumb.
Like, I just need to bring this up because
I've already done this before.
It's got to bring in the comparison. Rey, we're asking these questions because we have these bases of comparison to like bring up. We have like all these other Jedi that people were asking, like, you know, why is Rey like all this hooty doody? Whereas, like, with the Doctor, you didn't really need that because, like, you kind of knew, like, we knew from what we got that, like, she wasn't that great as a Time Lord, and she wanted to leave, go out into the universe. Like, the reason why the Doctor is competent, and she had experiences, she grew as a person, and, like, did all this stuff for so long that, like, she became a big deal. Like, we didn't need this timeless child thing to explain anything like that. We already knew why she was.
But that's not what it's doing.
But it is.
It's not explaining those things.
That's why it's so unnecessary. Because
it's not explaining it. It's not explaining why she's important, but it is kind of making her more important. The rest of the series would suggest she is, which is kind of my problem with it, because I really like sort of the Peter Capaldi sort of type of portrayal where, oh, he's just an idiot in a box trying to do good things. Whereas this episode reveals that, oh, the Doctor is special from the beginning. If we're making the comparison to Star Wars, I actually agree with Boris here. I actually am one of the rare people who like The Rise of Skywalker. I know that's very rare. I'm not completely keen on the Palpatine stuff, but there are questions, legitimate questions, Rey, whereas to why she's portrayed as special, she's getting the Jedi powers and everything like that, etc. Whereas with the Doctor, I always really liked the idea of the character of the Doctor, that she, someone who just was really sick of the Time Lords, just wanted to explore the universe, and just because of the influence of Ian and Barbara, was someone who was inspired to do good things. And now it's kind of all just been undone. Not completely undone, because obviously she doesn't remember her previous life. But my problem with the episode is basically they crafted a pointless backstory for the Doctor, which doesn't add anything to the character, seems to me as a completely pointless piece of pandering to the fans to try and make the Brain of Morbius faces canon. That's basically the only reason Chibnall wrote this. He watched the Brain of Morbius, was like, why are there all these previous Doctor faces? And just decided to write an entire series arc to make the Brain of Morbius faces canon.
Some of which have already been contradicted by the very conversation we've been having for the past several hours.
Even if I agreed with this, even if I agreed with your stance on the plot development, this is just like a thing with me. I want to draw a line where we're like putting words or thoughts into the writers' mouths and like, Chibnall obviously did this just to do this. It's like, no, we don't know that. We have zero evidence of that.
I'm kind of joking, but it's just my interpretation of it.
Yeah,
we spent the entire time talking about the point.
See, I don't want to get an attitude about this, but everything we've been talking about is the point. The point is the identity crisis. The point is, who am I and what does that mean relative to what I do? The point is, the Doctor reacts to finding out this incredible bombshell one way, and the Master reacts in this completely opposite way. The point is exploring the character and the relationships. And even if that doesn't have implications outside of this series, I thought it was a nice character arc for this series. To be who am I even?
Like I said, at the end of the day, she's still responsible for a whole entire species.
I'm beyond that now. I'm just talking about Boris saying it has no point. It so obviously does have a point.
Nobody was like, I want the Doctor to be the timeless child.
But why was she? Is because Chris Chibnall had a story to tell. And whether you like that story or not, I feel like that was the decision here. It wasn't any sort of pandering thing. It wasn't making the Morbius Doctors canon. It was, I want to tell this story about putting this person in this situation where who they are is not who they thought they were. And how do they react to that versus their longtime friend and enemy reacting in a completely different way? And what does that mean? And how do they move on from that? I feel like that is the why. That's all the why you need. I want this to be the last word on the Rey thing because I don't want to get into another Star Wars tangent. The point of Rey Palpatine was just answering fan questions. That was the point, was that a bunch of fanboys had questions about how can Rey do this and how can Rey do that? Even though we'd already had our implied answer, which is that the Force is the Force.
What does that have to do with their character then?
The Force is the Force, and sometimes it just people because it can do that, and Rey's character arc is wanting cosmic significance handed to her through lineage, and that's not how that's going to work out for her. And what made The Last Jedi's thing with her so great is that it was basically saying, no, you don't get it that easy. Yeah, you have all this ability, but what you want is a place in the big puzzle piece that is the story of this galaxy. You're not going to get that. You have to make that. And the problem with The Rise of Skywalker is it says, no, your place in the universe was already pre-decided. We're just going to hand it to you. You want lineage? All right, here you go. Here is the significance that you wanted handed to you on a silver platter. Oh, no, it turns out it was evil, but you can just do whatever. The reason that you make Rey a Palpatine is not because you have any sort of compelling story that you want to tell. I mean, sure you could, but not any compelling story that makes any sense as a follow-up to what you had. The reason that you make Rey a Palpatine is because fans had questions, and I think the story decision that's made because you want to tell a story is infinitely better than the story decision that you make because people have questions and you want to answer those questions at the expense of the character arc. And if all we have to show for the Timeless Child as a plot decision is a self-contained Series 12 arc about the Doctor like reflecting on who they are as a person and whether or not like their past or whatever means anything and how that changes or doesn't change who they are in the present, then I think it was worth it. It doesn't have to be a thing of like, oh, well, why would you do this if it doesn't actually answer anything? Who cares? Character arcs should be about character.
Well, here's my beef with this. Okay, I get the point is that like she has an identity crisis, and then like, oh, I'm what I am. It's fine. You could pretty much accomplish the same thing if you just kept it to like the Ruth Doctor, and like if it was just that would have been fine. But like, why do you gotta bring all this extra nonsense with like so many past doctors and stuff? Like, why not just keep it simple? Maybe they just had amnesia in general. Like, it didn't have to be like this whole thing. If the entire point is to have the Doctor go on this arc, fine. You don't have to mess with the lore all this much to like do it. I get that like the canon is like wishy-washy and stuff. You're throwing a huge curveball into this. And if it's only for this one season story, like, is it really worth it?
Nah, I felt like it was. And I'd say the point of that is to factor the Master into it.
I don't have a problem with them bringing other doctors and all that. Like I said, my problem is literally just that they made her special far as the Time Lord lore. And that's never going away now. And I'm never going to be okay with that.
Say it's never going away, but it could.
Just to clarify, I didn't mean to imply that, if I did, I apologize, that to imply that this reveal disregards her, the Doctor's characterization. My main issue is more that I hate that they put the character on a huge pedestal in story like this, when what's remarkable about them is that they are not a big part of their own universe, but they open you up to the possibility of this huge thing. And like you said, yes, they explain in the story itself, like the whole scene with the Root Doctor, that the Doctor's past doesn't need to define them. I completely understand that. It's more that overall the series has a tendency to overemphasize. And again, I have an issue with this when they do it with when Moffat does it and when Ross and David. It's not just my problem with this episode in particular. It's a general trend I've seen. This one just seemed to blow it up in a major way. And you can't really say that it's not coming back because they've left plot threads open, like the Root Doctor for one. Just wanted to clarify that point, is that it's more so much that I don't think it's a good thing to overvalue the Doctor as a character within the story, because what makes them impressive, it puts it in a different light, regardless of whether the story's saying that they are important because of their actions. It puts that in a different perspective. I'm wondering what to do now moving forward with it. And I also will say, just in regards to, I really wanted her to be a future incarnation because that actress is so good at the role. And I really want her to have her own series.
I mean, hey, she's still good.
I agree.
I would hire her for the next Doctor. I really like her.
And also, just because I don't know if I'll ever get the chance to mention this again, speaking of Russell, that's a whole discussion for another time. It's like all of the ways that this series parallels Series 3. But I feel like comparing this to the Doctor, like, literally becoming Jesus mode at the end of Series 3 is like, I think that's a really false equivalence.
I think it's as silly as the Doctor's Jesus stuff in Russell T. Davies. I'll say that.
You're right, Daniel. This has been an issue across all three showrunners, but all three showrunners have, like, they've contributed to the problem in different ways.
And Moffat seemed like he was the one that was like against it.
Moffat's issue is that he's always trying to deconstruct things on this show, and he can never really commit to it. So his era is always going back and forth between deconstructing stuff and then just doing that stuff. With Russell, his issue isn't any sort of necessarily like lore stuff, really. His issue, as far as like aggrandizing the Doctor goes, is always the way that he frames it. He always frames the Doctor as a Jesus figure. I have more of an issue with it when Russell does it because it is related to character traits. It's related to, like, literally, like, oh, the Doctor is such a messiah figure, and we're going to, like, make them that relative to the other characters in the story. The other characters just won't be able to shut up about how great the Doctor is. and how much of like a freaking empirical force in the universe they are. And it's like, that's great once or twice, but like to do it constantly, and I know it wasn't always in episodes written by Russell, but it was so indicative of like his approach, like a thing that happened, and it's not like any other characters in the script are really. And the one character who is fixated on it, the one character who does look at the Doctor and say, "You always acted like you were special, and now I know that you were special." It's the Master, and the point is that he's like really reacting to this the wrong way. There's a bit that I think you could maybe take wrong near the end, where the Doctor's like, "You think you've broken me by showing me like what I used to be? You think that makes me less? No, it makes me more. You want me to be scared because you're scared of everything," which I think is a great line. But she's like, "I'm so much more than you." You could take that, like, if you were reading it very like surface level, as being like, "Oh, you revealed to me that I'm genetically superior to you. I am the reason that you exist, and that makes me better than you." But no, it's not about that. It's about the fact that she's lived more life than she thought she had lived is a good thing, and like the fact that there is this whole mystery to what her previous lives were is something that the Master thinks should scare her or should make her feel lesser than she is, but that would just be his reaction, and that is his reaction. He finds out this thing about where they all came from, and he's like, "Oh my god, this like completely upends what I thought I knew about myself. This takes away any sense of control I might have had." And she reacts in the exact opposite way, and he still is like so bitter about it. I don't know. It's just layers upon layers with these two. Yeah, no, the Master is wrong. That's what I was getting at. The Master is the one person who's like, the fact that you are like what you are it is what makes you significant. It's what makes you significant to me. It's what makes me significant. And he's just wrong. And like, it might sound kind of callous, but really the big solution to this whole thing is that the Master just has to get over it. Like, he just has to move on.
I think you make a really good argument.
I'm really good at that, surprisingly. Sometimes I do make good arguments.
You have me questioning my own viewpoints at sometimes, in honesty. But I still stick to my view that the episode was, the twist was unnecessary, and I don't like the direction that they took the Doctor's past. Although Philip Hinchcliffe and Robert Holmes are now canonized as doctors, which is quite an interesting development.
Yes.
That is one development I like. But there you go. I've already expressed my thoughts. Apart from that,
So I guess final thoughts. This is a brief summary.
No matter the Master, no matter how we feel about the way the episode went, I really want more of this incarnation.
But yeah, I'm gonna let you guys mostly take final thoughts. I think this is a pretty good finale. It's got its issues. It's got a lot of fat that I think could be trimmed, but it's a great improvement over the last finale. And if the way I feel about this finale is kind of the way I feel about this whole series. Like, this two-parter really sums up Series 12 for me. It's got a lot of weak spots. It's generally better than what we got last series. We can talk about ratings or whatever. I know none of us really cares about that. I noticed a way more positive reaction to Series 12 than Series 11, like across the board from people who are still watching. I'm just happy to see more people enjoying this show, whether I agree with them or not. If the improvement curve continues, Series 13 is as much of an improvement over this as this was over Series 11. I think that will be something really special. And I don't know, I'm leaving this series with a bigger sense of optimism than I left Series 11 with. I'm happy with it for the most part.
Blanked on her name. Jo Martin's the name of the root doctor. I just want to point out, because again, I think she's great. For as little as she's been in it, she's such an impression that I'm looking forward to when she pops up again. As for the episode itself, I felt this was a bit of a mess. The Doctor spends like 3/4 of it not really being inactive and just going through this whole thing. I take an issue as well as making it a Cyberman story and a story about the timeless child, because they've too much to juggle, and I felt if they needed to focus on more, the Doctor finding out about her history only has character beats to do with it. It doesn't gel as well as it could have. There were some moments I liked. Like I said, I liked that moment of Yaz and Graham. I think the actors do fantastic in their role. I'm a little more partial to the human cast, even though they are kind of bland. I think if they just focus more on the lone Cybermen stuff and the Cyber War, that would have been a bit more interesting.
Yeah, pour one out for the Cybermen. They keep getting screwed over, even decent episodes.
No,
This is a problem with the Cybermen in general. I think they don't want to go too much into the body horror aspect of it, and they just come up as generic robots. I understand, like in macro, in terms of series 12, the Timeless Child has an arc, and I actually like Nick's viewpoint, and I agree with it a lot, that it's about them having an identity crisis and coming at a completely different angle. That is somewhat interesting. It's just that then more in the macro of what this says about the series and how they're going to continue the character, it could be a negative sign. It's one of those things where I will wait to see what they do with this. It doesn't have as much impact in this episode because it's more the Doctor going, lol, no, and then moving on with this story with the Cybermen and the Master. But we'll see what happens. One thing I said, I think I enjoyed Series 11 more than most people in this room or everyone in this room. But I will say, I did say watching it that I wish it took more risks. I wish it was a bit more daring. I felt Series 12, for all its faults, was a bit more daring. And even with this reveal and what I might say, I'm still enthusiastic going to watch the next series. And I hope we get something decent out of it. I hope they keep the cast down to just the Doctor and Yaz, because I know Graham and Ryan are leaving. I'm not as bummed out by where the series can go. I'm just a little hesitant towards what they'll do with this, because they're clearly not done with any of this, especially with how much they left ambiguous and how much they left completely in the dark. The one thing I will say, I have not seen people talk about Doctor Who this much in quite a while. That must say something, whether good or bad. I haven't seen people disengage. Like, I finally started watching Classic Who again because this series has reinvigorated my love for this show, for better or for worse.
I have a whole thing about how I think, love it or hate it, what Chibnall's doing with the show right now is the most in line it's been with Classic Who in a while. But as of right now, I feel like Whittaker's trajectory is almost like a mirror of McCoy's trajectory.
Yeah, well, especially with the whole master plan and stuff like that. But I will say, yeah, getting writers for hire to do random, bizarre stuff with this crazy little show, that is very Classic Who, so I'll agree.
Most of you all know my feelings on the episode. I like the Master. I like the Doctor. Everything else is not very good. I find the Timeless Child thing in a bubble to be interesting, but the fact that she is now responsible for the Time Lords and she plays an important part into their society and how their species, that's just there now. And I don't care if it serves some other character arc or whatever. It's not a good thing. I'm not going to agree to it's a good thing no matter what. It's there. Unless they erase everything on the show, it's never going away. So, yeah. And Series 12, I don't feel like it's any better than Season 11. It just has more stuff hitting the screen and hoping that you will be more interested because there's more stuff happening. There we go.
Okay, Series 12 as a whole, it was better than Series 11, which is very easy because Series 11 was horrible. I loved The Haunting of Diodati. I think I already expressed that. It was an amazing episode. I also loved Fugitive the Judoon, and I loved Joe Martin's Doctor. And the series art was interesting as it went along. Other than that, besides a couple of decent stories like Spyfall, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, which is a horrible title, but good episode. It was a mixed bag of a series, which I think didn't really completely deliver. And I think Chris Chibnall is not really delivering as showrunner, sadly. I'm not a Chris Chibnall hater. Like, I like his episodes prior to becoming showrunner, like, more than most people do, honestly. I was expecting more out of him than what we've gotten, but yeah, Series 11 was horrible. Series 12 has been just kind of about on the same level as Series 2, which is the worst series of seasons 1 to 10. So that's not very good. As far as this episode, I didn't care for the twist. I was literally basically begging for the twist not to be the Doctor. I would have preferred it to be the Master instead of the Doctor. The end result of the sacrifice with the extra character sacrificing himself for the Doctor, I can't remember his name even now, was out of nowhere. Didn't feel very earned. The supporting characters were forgettable. The companions, Yaz was actually a better character in this series. Point, she's actually my favorite of the three companions, which might not be a popular opinion. Graham was great last season. This season, he's basically just been comic relief. It seems like he's not really developed much. And Ryan, I hate Ryan. I hate Tosin Cole more than I hate Ryan because he's just a horrible actor. I don't like the twist. I don't like the end result of the episode. I don't like the way they handled the lone Cybermen. Honestly, while Ascension of the Cybermen is a solid, not great setup, The Timeless Child, and this is a controversial opinion, is the worst series finale since the series came back. Even though the Battle of blah 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 blah
Ranscore Ascalon,
is
I think it is.
the Battle of something is uninteresting and not really a finale. It is just kind of watchable and not really bad. Last of the Time Lords at least has the really good exit for Martha, which I think is a really good point for her character.
I mean, that argument
And
it only really becomes bad in the last 15 minutes.
yeah, there is actually some good bits in Last of the Time Lords. Yeah, I agree. And that's why the Timeless Children, I think, is I keep reminding myself to call me the Timeless Children instead of Child, is just a disaster. I don't think it works. Chris Chibnall, like, I've liked a lot of his episodes that he's written, particularly Resolution, but I don't think the Timeless Children works. I think it is a very flawed twist. I don't like the resolution of the story. I don't like the way they handle the lone Cybermen. It's quite a bit of a mess, unfortunately. That's my conclusion.
Whether you like it just like Ryan, he had the best story arc where he conquered his dyspraxia.
Basketball game, yeah.
I expected him to go cold,
Irritating as hell.
and let's
Can't
just
stand
compare it, I guess.
All right.
I actually do like how his dyspraxia is betrayed, just to point out, but yeah,
Agreed.
Also
that was
agree.
fun.
So this two-parter, not great, Bob. There's a lot of time that could have been spent better. I don't really like the revelations too much. As far as like the overall story arc goes, like I don't like that we didn't do much with the whole companions finding out about Gallifrey being destroyed. Like that didn't really seem to get like a proper climax. Maybe we'll talk about it in the special, but who knows? Yeah, just in general, I just don't like the story too much. Like it's just there's dumb moments. There's a couple of cool things I like, but like it's just not very good. As for the season overall, we're doing the series 11 to 12 comparison, and like it's hard to say because like certain things about season 12 are better. Like the Doctor is a little bit better, Yaz is a bit better, but then like the lore gets messed up with a lot more. Graham doesn't get as much to do, and I like Graham. He's my man.
Graham's great.
Bradley Walsh, man, the legend.
Mentioned that cute scene between Graham and Yaz.
No, we've talked about that.
I mentioned I liked that scene.
It's really well written.
Yeah, I think just for that scene, I am happy that the companions were in here. Continue, Boris.
Yeah, since we're on the companions, like it is a bit of a shame that we'll probably lose Graham and Ryan at the end of this, and it's like in the special or whatever. It's like I'd say best case scenario if they're gonna go in this direction, it's like do what they did with Martha in series 4, where like she comes in like occasionally. Like that'd be awesome because I don't want to like lose Graham forever necessarily. Hopefully he'll show up.
They are hinting at it pretty hard, which is worrying.
Like I hope it's not forever. Like I understand like losing him from the main team just to be like, you know, we gotta focus, narrow down and focus. Because like a lot of the time in these past 2 seasons, they haven't used 3 companions correctly.
Syndrome of too many people in the TARDIS.
They should have built it up over time. Maybe that might have worked better. But like in general, it's been a mess. I would say Series 12 for me is a little bit worse than 11, just on the grounds that like it did mess with things I liked more, so that's unfortunate. And as for the future,
Just saying 11 is irredeemably bad.
I understand it in a sense, but just like at least with Series 11, I can kind of just keep it in a bubble and not have to think about it too much. Whereas like 12 just actively screws with things, and it annoys me. And also, it has Orphan 55, man. That's just bad.
Orphan 55 is better than the Saranga Conundrum. The Saranga Conundrum is the most horrible episode of the entire new series.
Never in my life comprehend people who feel that way. At worst, it's harmless. I don't get it. I don't understand.
Pardon?
We thought the Timeless Children would send us into back and forth argument. It turned out the Saranga Conundrum was what did it.
Who knew? As for the Chimney era right now, as it stands, it's like I am kind of confused. Like, there's all this talk about the 5-year plan, and like it's all very confusing just on the grounds that like with Series 11, it's very much a blank slate, and now it's like Series 12, we're just throwing in all the lore. And it's like it feels kind of confused, and like we're not really sure.
Did you miss me?
Yeah. Like it's very kind of weird. I'm very curious to see like what exactly is at the end of this 5-year plan. Kind of just to see like what was anything changed, like what happened. Like it's very interesting. I guess the cliffhanger could lead to a neat special where the Daleks are back. Yay! I don't like Daleks, but it's like I don't know. Revolution of the Daleks. So they're back.
Well,
Yeah, they're back.
apparently people are saying that's the prison from Shada, which is yet another Tom Baker reference.
It could be Storm Cage.
It's
Stop.
weird to me that after all this time of like mixing and matching the Master and the Cybermen and the Daleks for a story, we haven't done one that's got all 3 in a significant.
3 of them.
I mean, I will say, Chibnall in Revolution handled the Daleks really well, so better than Moffat did. I'm interested in the next episode, even if it's a Christmas episode, which I'm usually not too fond of.
I'd say the stories were more interesting at the very least in the Moffat era, maybe. Sometimes, I like Magician's Apprentice a lot, so
I actually really liked Asylum of the Daleks as well. It's just Moffat tended to just overuse the Daleks and just kind of shove them into random cameos, and it just kind of made them a bit less threatening.
Yeah.
That was my problem with Moffat's handling of the Daleks, really.
well.
I think that was an obligation, though, with
Yeah,
Terry Nation.
it does feel like there's an obligation with.
Yeah, and that's
I feel
kind
like-
of unfortunate.
It's like okay, we got to figure out how to kill.
Yeah.
Them. Let's throw the Daleks at it.
We need to wrap it.
So,
I
like,
personally feel
what
like
you-
Moffat really never handled the Daleks all that well as characters. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 decent episodes written by Moffat that the Daleks happen to be in, but I don't think he ever handled the Daleks well.
We'll have to go through that as we go. But
Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff. There's a hiatus. People aren't
Definitely handled Davros.
they're trying to talk about this stuff.
I will say I am interested to see if they get the Christmas slot back.
They might. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, what everything's going to look like within the next 9 months, so maybe not look that far ahead.
I bet he'll troll everybody and make it a Thanksgiving special.
That's not
They do
really
not
an English
get the
thing,
Christmas-
so probably not. Maybe a Halloween special.
That would be a bigger
I honestly
troll
hope they
then.
do not get the Christmas slot back, because Doctor Who Christmas specials just tend to be really average.
I'm always shocked when people are so sad that they lost the Christmas slot when it's like, you guys remember Christmas specials, right? Like, on average, they weren't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
pretty
so
much done.
Series 13 might be interesting. The Moffat era is still better by default, I guess. You know, I'm still watching the show. The ratings are down, but like, you know, hopefully they'll do something to pick things up at some point. So I might have some more videos in the future about it, so who knows.
Thank you guys for inviting me to this. I'm usually more coherent in text. I really enjoyed talking, and I'm really glad we got to talk about this episode
Yeah,
because
it's nice talking to you.
I had a lot of feelings about it. So
We all do.
I'm
it's just
glad
that
you joined.
real life kind of diluted my initial ire. So
Yeah, like the apocalypse has kind of like diminished the effect of the episode, unfortunately.
Our
Okay,
English
Apocalypse.
finger.
Yeah.
I don't care if she's the timeless child. Where's the doctor when we need her?
Anyway, goodbye.
Right here.
Bye.
Bye.
You have to.